Welcome to Instant Deck Techs. The aim of this series is to give you a short, concise guide on how to build a certain deck. It won't cover every card, but we'll go through all the categories and go over the types of cards needed to make the deck work. Any card mentioned will be down in the description below. The commander of this deck is Eloise, Nephalia Sleuth. It is 3 blue-black for a 4/4 legendary creature, human rogue. It has, whenever another creature you control dies, investigate. This means you make a clue token. Whenever you sacrifice a token, surveil 1, which means you look at the top card of your library, and if you want, you can put that card into your graveyard. This is going to be an artifact-based Aristocrats deck. We'll be sacking creatures for value, which with Eloise out, will create us a clue artifact token. We'll then sack those for even more value, all while draining out our opponents. First place to start is with our Aristocrat Package. In this, we'll want token makers, sack outlets, and drain effects. Generally speaking, the majority of these effects in this section we want to care about artifacts in some way. Kicking off with our token makers, for synergy reasons we're mainly looking for cards that make artifact creatures. The makeup of the rest of the deck really means that we want as many artifacts in play as possible, and the fact that the tokens these make can attack and block makes them really important. There are some bigger, more top-end token makers as well, which you can also consider. These also do a pretty good job at getting in the red zone and getting some damage through as well. You can also run some extra cards to make non-token artifacts, in the form of treasure and more clue tokens. More is always more in Commander, and we'll have plenty of use for them. Cards like Revel Enrichers and Tamiyo's Journal, which give us artifact tokens, as well as an alternative win con and an unconditional tutor respectively, are especially really great examples of cards to look out for. One of the other uses for those tokens is sacking them. The treasure and clues can sack themselves, but the creatures will really need a hand at getting themselves into the graveyard. Again, when looking at these effects, look for as much utility as possible. So cards like Scrapyard Recombiner, Arcum Dagsson, and Kuldotha Forgemaster will allow us to tutor for some other key cards in the deck. Cards like Trading Post just do a little bit of everything, and then Krark-Clan Ironworks is a really big mana boost for when we want to cash in a servo or two. Then there are also some more traditional creature sack effects. These are still really good in the deck, as they give us a bit of extra redundancy, and if you're running a lot more of the creature token makers, they go up in value in the deck as well. Reprocess and March of the Machines may not look like sack outlets, but go with me on this. Reprocess can turn any of our artifact tokens into straight card draw, while being able to let us sack any amount of them that we want. March of the Machines is a little more all-in, as it turns all of our artifacts and tokens into creatures. The tokens will be 0/0s, so will die immediately. Importantly though, they will be creatures when they die, so they will trigger any Blood Artist effects that we have out. Talking of those drain effects, first up are the ones that care specifically about tokens or artifacts. At the moment there aren't too many of these, with Marionette Master being by far the pick of the bunch, as with the Fabricate you can throw around 4 damage whenever we sack a token. We can also run some more standard drain effects. This is one of the other reasons we're prioritising creature artifact tokens in the deck, as they'll still trigger the drain effects from Blood Artist style effects. There's much more of these effects going around, so you can be a bit more choosy. Generally speaking, where possible, look for ones that say each opponent, so the whole board gets drained out. Moving on to our draw spells, there are a couple of different places we can look for some card advantage. First up is cards that care about all the tokens that we'll be making. Skullclamp will happily munch down any servos or Thopters. Idol of Oblivion will be a better Phyrexian Arena in this deck, and then Shimmer Dragon allows us to tap anything spare we have lying around to get us some additional cards. We then have artifact creatures that either draw us cards when they ETB, or get us additional cards when other artifacts come in. I play Baleful Strix in way too many decks, but it just does everything you want in a deck like this. Thought Monitor is a bigger version of it, and then Vedalken Archmage is always a card to consider in any artifact-heavy deck. After those, we can look at instants and sorceries that care about artifacts to draw us cards. Spells with Affinity and Improvise would be especially good, as we'll have plenty of artifacts to bring the cost down. We'll be mentioning Tezzeret Planeswalkers a few times in this video, as they do multiple things that we really want to do. Tezzeret Artifice Master makes some tokens, but we'll mainly be wanting to play it for the 0 ability so we can try and draw 2 cards per turn. Moving on to ramp, this shouldn't surprise anyone when we say it's going to be mainly on mana rocks. Where possible, I try to keep them costing 2 or less, just so you can get them out nice and early. There will be some other spells in this deck that make treasure, but consider them bonus effects. Eat your vegetables and make sure you're packing enough artifact ramp. The other way you can take it is with artifact creatures that tap for mana. While slower than their non-creature counterparts, they will trigger the regular Blood Artist effects when they die, as well as the artifact-specific ones, so because of that they may warrant a place in the deck. Your interaction will be dependent on your playgroup. If you're more competitive, then you might want to run a bit more counter magic, just to give you the ability to interact with those combos. If you're just after killing things, however, these colours don't really have too much of an issue with that. Rabid Hybridization and Feed the Swarm are just some examples of very good removal that we have in Myr. And then Executioner's Capsule and Underhand Designs are just some good thematic Artifact Matters cards that synergize nicely with the deck. When it comes to board wipes, we also have plenty of options. I really like Oblivion Stone and Phyrexian Scriptures in a deck like this, as we can recur the Oblivion Stone pretty easily, and Phyrexian Scriptures doesn't hit a large portion of the deck. A bit of protection is never a bad thing in a game of Commander, and while we don't need Eloise out all the time to make the deck work, having her around will help give us that additional value we need to help beat our opponents. To help protect her, you can look to run something like the standard Lightning Greaves, or again, a bit of counter magic. Spell Swindle, while expensive, can be used to stop a removal spell or a board wipe, or just counter some big dumb dragon to give us 1 billion treasure tokens. I also like a bit of recursion in a deck like this, especially as our commander can mill cards we don't want early game into the graveyard by surveilling. Something like Skeleton Shard can easily return a key artifact from our graveyard to our hand, and then spells like Victimize, which also want us to sack things, synergize really nicely with the deck. There will be some more effects for recurring artifacts in our utility land section, which we'll get into in a moment. Before that, however, we need to talk about winning the game. And first up is cards that turn our massive artifact tokens into huge burly creatures that we can smack our opponents with. Some of these do require a bit of build up, but the added value we get from cards like the Antiquities War and Tezzeret the Seeker more than make up for that. Another way of causing a load of damage based on the number of artifacts we have is with cranial plating. Hook it onto a Thopter for a bit of evasion and watch the life totals crumble. Another way of weaponizing all those artifacts is with Tezzeret, Agent of Bolas, and Tezzeret, Master of the Bridge. They both have abilities to drain out an opponent, which should help kill a few players at the table. Another way to use all those tokens is by cashing them into Time Sieve. If we're making 5 or more tokens a turn, maybe with a Sharding Sphinx or something big like that, we can technically take infinite turns. And then for some more alternate win cons, we can look at cards like Mirrodin Besieged and Mechanized Production. Neither of the conditions needed should be too hard for us to achieve. If we have Mirrodin Besieged out early, we can just surveil our deck into our graveyard with Eloise, and then with Mechanized Production, we can put on something like a Wurmcoil Engine to hit face, or something like a Clue token, as we'll probably have 8 of them without too much hassle. Rounding off the deck with some utility lands, and one of the things I like about this commander is the amount of additional effects we can get away with off of our lands. First of these is the artifact lands. They tap for mana, and then we can sack them if we need to get some extra bit of damage across. And then there's cards like Buried and Academy Ruins, to give us an extra bit of recursion to get back something that we've sacked. Talking of, cards like Phyrexian Tower, High Market, and Phyrexia's Core give us additional sack outlets that are much harder to remove than some of the other effects that we're running. To give us some extra things to sack, we have Foundry of the Consuls and Treasure Vault. And then finally, for some additional tutoring, we can run Inventor's Fair and Urza's Saga to get any key artifacts out of the deck. The rest of your mana base will be very dependent on what you have available to you. We've recently released a video with some advice on building a deck with a budget mana base, which might be of help. Until next time, please like, share and subscribe, and let us know down in the comments if there are any commanders you'd like to see a deck tech on. Thank you very much for watching.